I think the main reason that attracted me to oncology in the first place is its complexity and the science. Its relationship with embryology, embryonal development and cancer are closely related. And also the fascinating mysteries about the cancer cell that are still to be resolved and are getting new knowledge appearing almost every day. So, in addition to that, the recognition that there's so much to do. The war on cancer has been started by President Nixon around the 70s with the search of drugs all over the world in the different floras. And notable progress have been made, but even today, there are challenges that we're still facing, and they are calling for a solution. So that's a very important motor to keep me motivated. Yeah, well, where do we start? I mean, I've been in the business for over 36 years, but I can say that everything started really, really before my graduation. I was lucky enough to have international experience into research oncology that opened my eyes to the fascinating world of oncology science. Then, after finishing my oncology fellowship and right at the University of Toronto, I went into industry, and that I learned the ropes of clinical trials from the very beginning. And then after that, I was lucky enough to have a series of positions of increasing importance. And among them, 10 years with Eli Lilly were very important to me. I was involved with the development of Gemzar and Alimta, two drugs that actually reach global reach, and they are used in multiple tumors even today. And that took me actually to the advantage of relating myself with international experience and many investigators in all parts of the world. And, changing from an academic environment when you are working just for yourself and to build your CV to an international team of collaborations where you see that your work prospers and lots of people get interested and jump on your boat is an enormous satisfaction. Besides, from the company point of view, getting those drugs approved in numerous indications was a big success. Then the second biggest hit, I would say, was I was Chief Medical Officer for Abraxis Bioscience. We got Abraxane, which is a nanoparticle formulation of the old Taxol, paclitaxel. We got it approved in a number of indications like breast and importantly in pancreas. I was lucky enough to be involved in the design of the pivotal study of Abraxane and gemcitabine that got approval worldwide, and it was a big satisfaction. We published that in 2013, and again, implied the collaboration with multiple people across the world. And last but not least, my transfer to Australia as oncology medical advisor for the Australian, the Asia Pacific region was a major highlight. The quality of the work and the amazing data that comes from Australia's work recognized. So I am very pleased and honored to work with my colleagues, and coming back is like coming to a family, really. So those, I would say in a nutshell, there are many other things, but those are the biggest highlights that still shine to this day. Well, that's a very relevant question because I've been fortunate enough to work in large companies and small companies. And the way clinical development is approached by those two entities is completely different. Large companies have big pockets. They are able to spend enormous amount of money in very large studies, which are for registrational purpose and marketing purposes, ultimately, all over the world. Those are called phase 3 studies that involve a number of people with different ethnic backgrounds, different treatments, etc. Small companies, on the other hand, as is logical and it's a natural process of their evolution, they start small, they have restricted funding, they depend on investors many times if they are not gone public, in which case, they are exposed to the stock markets and the variations of the outside world. So the importance of planning a clinical trial in those scenarios is completely different. Many times a large company has a failure of a phase 3 trial, for example, and it doesn't represent a big dent because they have many others that they can spend their money on. For a small company, on the other hand, you have to be extremely careful how to do it right the first time because, as the saying goes, there is no second chance for a first impression. So you have to do it right the first time with a clear purpose of strategy. And being CMO of a small biotech company is actually a very rewarding experience because you don't get that opportunity to design strategy when you're working for larger companies. basically you get everything served on a plate for you, and you have to just execute the plans. But clinical development in a small company has a lot more responsibility, a lot more visibility, and involves a lot of interaction with the public, particularly investors and the scientific community. So the approach has to be tailored to each situation. Well, bringing new treatments is a purpose of both large and small companies. And the relationship with regulatory bodies is kind of different depending on which area of the world you're working on. These days, there is an international conference of harmonization in which all regulatory agencies tend to sing from the same book, if you wish. So data that is obtained in certain parts of the world and accepted in other jurisdictions as well, because they follow the same principles. Now, the involvement of patients in directing what course exactly research will take, that's more ostensible and more palpable in late phase studies, namely the phase 3 registrational studies. Once the safety and efficacy profile of a drug is known, based on phase 2 studies mostly, that provide to the sponsor certain confidence, that running a phase 3 trial with these large investments is justified. At that time, patients, particularly advocacy groups, pancreatic is an important case because of a desperate situation of this terrible neoplasia. They have had a lot of voice, particularly in pushing the regulators to develop drugs faster and approve drugs faster. It's a double-edged sword because you don't want to approve something quickly that then you find out that you have to withdraw from the market. But nevertheless, with the immense offer of molecules for development that exists today, there is certainly an effort that is very visible. The FDA is approving things at an unusual rate compared to previous years with very good science. But I mean to say, in early phase studies, for example, those are done by biotech companies, phase 1 and phase 2s. Large companies do them too, but it's more predominant in smaller companies. The input of patients is not that present because you're trying to establish safety and efficacy of the drug, and that's not the time. For example, when patients can talk about quality of life or expectations for what they may explain in terms of side effects, etc. So that's known once you finish phase 2 and moving to phase 3. And that's when decisions on quality of life and patient input becomes very, very important. That's probably the most critical question every time anybody wants to start a clinical trial of global reach. First of all, you need to start with the end in mind. You need to know where the trial is going to go. In this day and age, where evolution of oncology is happening so quickly, sometimes it's very hard to predict what's going to happen. For example, in large trials may take 5 or 6 years to complete. And with the number of companies and laboratories churning out new compounds, by the time you end that study, you may be already behind or obsolete and no longer relevant. So knowing what's going on, where the field is going, what the competitors are doing, where the gaps are, which is the most important question perhaps of all, both medically and scientifically, I think is key. The other thing is actually have a good strategic plan, which is directly connected to the point we just mentioned. The strategic plan needs to be flexible, needs to be adaptable to circumstances, needs to be able to change and not be rigid, stuck to original patterns of thought that maybe get modified as science advances or new patterns of knowledge emerge that oblige you to modify your course. And one very important element as well is involving early the regulatory agencies. And that's something that the FDA continuously exhorts people to do. Many companies look too much at their navel and they don't talk to the regulators. And when they go there, they find out, oh, I should have thought of that. Why didn't I think of that? And maybe it's too late to change the plans or modify them. So involving the regulatory agencies early, who not only need to know what your current study is aiming to achieve, but where you're going with the study and what your strategic overall plan for the particular molecule or drug candidate is absolutely important. No less important is, of course, involving centers of high capacity and high reputation. You need to have key opinion leaders that have experience in clinical trials, that know exactly what the risks and benefits are for patients and how data needs to be handled. The data is extremely important if you don't take care of it. The results could be totally counterproductive. So essential monitoring, keeping an eye, and surveillance of the study is absolutely critical. And establishing, therefore, a close relationship with those investigators is very important. Many companies utilize CROs, contract research organizations, to do these large studies. But in addition to that, which is a great function that we all need, we need to establish a personal connection with investigators. That I cannot tell you the immense influence that has on the good conduction of a study. So there are many other things we could talk all day about what makes a successful trial, but having a good statistical plan and good calculations is absolutely essential. Numbers are the last word in a clinical trial. Well, the main thing, if you wish, is the science. I mean, I'm always attracted by good science. And when I discovered all the data that RC220 has, and particularly the focus that Race Oncology has on this program, I was fascinated. There is a novel mechanism in a drug that has multiple possibilities. I call it a pipeline within a molecule because of all the possibilities that it has. The rigor of the science. Poor science has very short legs, doesn't go anywhere, but good science persists. And the acumen of the people, the brightness and the talent of the people, and they're just great to work with. So what else can you ask for? I mean, good science, good people, tenacity, good spirit, good collaboration. Those are key elements, to work happily in that environment.